Welcome to Reddit After Hours. This is r/LetsNotMeet, where OP takes his Tinder date home to her place and comes face to face with her stalker. Our first Reddit post comes from Tadpole Conscious 975, titled Security Guard at the Gym This Morning. So, the weirdest thing happened this morning. I, a 30-year-old female, went to the gym this morning around 5:30 a.m. The building is open 24 hours, and as such, there is always a security guard manning the front desk that sits in the middle of a large, fairly empty foyer area. Behind the security desk is a row of elevators. The gym is on the 4th floor, and I'm not exactly sure what's on the other floors, above or below it. Probably some office spaces or such. I walked in off the street, still dark outside, ready to work out. I was still really sleepy, but I noticed that the security guard isn't one that I've seen before. He smiled at me and said hello from behind the security computer, and immediately I kind of felt weird. Nothing out of the ordinary happened, but I got these weird chills and I thought, I don't like this guy. Before I could give him the benefit of the doubt, he stood up and walked out from behind the desk to wait with me by the elevators, which I also thought was kind of weird. Didn't he have to remain at the security desk? Why would he be going to another floor? But who knows? I don't know what business he has as a security guard. That being said, I still didn't want to ride in the elevator with him. Something just told me to stay put. When the elevator did come, he kind of made a gesture to me that was kind of like, after you, while motioning towards the elevator. I faked a phone call and smiled in a way that said, oops, looks like I can't take the elevator. All yours. This is where it kind of gets messed up and where I need people's opinions. I stayed there for another 7 minutes. I know it was about that long because I listened to 2 songs in my headphones. Then I push the elevator button again and it dings immediately, like it was already on that floor. Surely enough, the door opens and I walk over to it. The guy is still in the elevator. He never left the floor. He never even went up, it doesn't look like. He was just standing there in the elevator the whole freaking time. Was he waiting for me? Then, the creepiest thing. He smiles at me as if to say, aren't you gonna get in? I took 3 steps backwards when I saw him. He could tell that I was really startled. Like an idiot, I took another fake phone call. Then I decided to take the stairs the whole way. As I was working out, I got less sleepy and was thinking about that interaction, and it was getting more and more bizarre as I remembered it. Can someone give me their opinion on what could have happened here? Was I overreacting by being freaked out? I just had this horrible feeling and still do, even though this was about 6 hours ago. OP, I know people are going to say, well, he probably just went up a few floors and just happened to be coming down when you push the button again, but I don't know. What are the chances that he went up to whatever floor he was going to, and he just so happened out of multiple elevators, right, to get into the same exact elevator that he was in previously and come down at the exact second that you push the button? Something seems really off there, OP, and you did a great job trusting your gut. Always trust your gut. People don't need to do something crazy, illegal, or overtly obscene for you to get a bad feeling of them and not want to ride in an elevator with them. So, great job, OP. You trusted your gut and you stayed safe. That's great. Our next Reddit post comes from Acceptable Injury 754, titled Worst Hinge Date I've Ever Been On. So, I told my friends what I'm about to tell you, and they urged me to share it here. This happened back in December, about a week before Christmas. I'm a 32-year-old guy currently using my GI Bill to go to college in a city in one of the mountain time zone states. I'm so busy with school and work that I don't really have time to go out and socialize often. So I have to rely a lot on apps to go on dates. I matched with this really cute girl around my age and we had a good conversation, and then we scheduled a date. It was at a bar restaurant not far from either of us to drive, so it was pretty easy. She was very pretty in person and we actually got along great. During our conversation, I found out that she worked in a non-cop role at the police station, basically like a receptionist. I also learned that she had a roommate, whom she said was out of town for the holidays. She added that she hated being home alone because she had a crazy ex-boyfriend who stalked her. I was a little uneasy at that, and I told her as much, and she said that he's harmless, so I kind of let it go. We had another few more drinks and were there for another hour or so, and at her suggestion, she said that we should go back to her place. I mean, I wasn't going to argue it. I mean, come on, she was hot. She then insisted on driving. I told her that I was fine, and she said no. I had been drinking, and she saw way too many DUIs at her job. I got what she was saying, but I only had 2 gins and tonics and was fine, but she again insisted. I thought this was weird, but I didn't care. So we went to her house, and she walked right up to the door and just opened it. She didn't even unlock it, it was already open. I found this very odd because she just said that she had a stalker and that her roommate was gone. She started feeding the cat, and as she was doing that, I saw a bowl of cereal on the counter. I touched it, and it was still cold, like it hadn't really been there for a while. The cereal wasn't soggy either. I asked her whose it was, and she hesitated, and she said that she ate it as a snack before heading to the bar. It just didn't make any sense, but before I could say anything, she just kissed me and put her arms around me seductively and said, "Take me to her bedroom." Again, she was pretty hot, so I quit caring about the cereal pretty quickly. So we started fooling around, and I went to close the curtains, and she told me to leave them open. A few minutes later, maybe 5, we were in bed, and my back was to the window, and she let out a huge gasp, a scared gasp. Her eyes were at the window, and I turned around, and I saw someone in a hoodie, and they took off. I heard these steps running on her back deck. I immediately jumped up and ran out to make sure that the doors were locked, and of course, the front door wasn't. I ran to it and locked it, and right when I did, the door started banging. I went to open it because I decided I'm going to mess this dude up, or at least try to. And she told me to just go back to bed with her. I screamed at her and asked if she was insane. And she told me that he does this and he usually goes away. And I asked her, "You know that this is your ex?" And she said, "Yeah, and not to worry about it." At this point, he started banging on the side of the house on the other end, and she didn't seem at all scared and kept trying to get me to go back to bed with her. I didn't want to call the cops because for all I know, this dude is a cop, or she'd know the cops that show up and they would take her side. I also couldn't just leave because my car was at the bar, and now I'm terrified. At this point, I started calling her out for the door not being locked, the cereal, and I openly called her a liar. She couldn't come up with any logical answers, and I had no idea what I had just gotten myself into. I shouldn't have done this, but my fight or flight was pretty much kicked in, and I told her, if this is a robbery or some kind of setup, I promise you I will unalive you both. Now, I'm not tough by any means or anything, but my fear told me to let her know that no matter what this was, they'd have a fight on their hands. My thoughts of what was going to happen to me were all over the place. I was able to order an Uber off my phone, and I didn't tell her. I just kept arguing with her and asking her what's going on, hoping to just keep her talking and in the room. I stayed right next to the door so I could leave ASAP. Luckily, I never actually took my pants off, and I got my jacket and shoes that were right by the door, so I was able to get dressed pretty quickly. The Uber showed up, and without saying anything, I just opened her door and ran out as fast as I could. I looked back at the door, and she was just standing there. It's only been a little over a month, but I honestly have no idea what the heck I got myself into. I don't believe the story of just a girl with a crazy ex based off the factors that I just told you. It feels like either a robbery or some type of weird fetish cuck type thing. I don't know. Definitely something that I'm very mad at myself for. And I mean, I'm a 9-year Navy vet and I allowed myself to get into a situation like that. I reported her account on the Uber ride back to the bar, and I told the bartender as well that if they ever saw her in there again, this is what happened. OP, just the fact that she stood on the porch after you ran out the door and didn't try to lock it as quick as possible so her quote stalker didn't get back inside the house is very telling. Something was going to happen to you, OP. Now, this is a good reminder to be more like the girl in the first story. Trust your instincts. 9 out of 10 times, you're usually right. Something bad, I'm pretty sure, was going to happen to you. I'm so glad it didn't. I'm glad you're safe. But yeah, OP, that sounds creepy as hell. Our next Reddit post comes from Sensitive Gazelle 790, titled Creepy Bus Driver with Bad Intentions. This story happened to me in 2022 when I was around 24 years old. For a bit of context, I am non-binary, assigned female at birth, but let's say I look very feminine. At the time, I was studying in Paris and renting a room in the house of the mom of my boyfriend at the time, in a city that was more than an hour away from Paris, but only 20 minutes away from Versailles, another important city in France. It was in winter during a school break, I think, and I was going out in Paris to see a longtime internet friend for the first time. She turned out to be a very toxic and very problematic person who I'm not in contact with anymore. But the story is not about her. I must say that I have a rather petite frame because of an eating disorder that I've been struggling with ever since I was a child, and I've always looked much younger than my age. Even these days, I still have to show ID when I want to buy alcohol. On the day of my encounter with my friend, I was dressed very casually with a skirt. Our encounter went very well, but since I live far away and was planning to see my boyfriend later, I had to leave before midnight because public transportation would become very scarce after 10 p.m., and I had around a 2-hour commute to get there. Unfortunately, I didn't leave early enough, so I managed to get a train to Versailles, but would have to wait almost an hour to get a bus to the nearest city from my boyfriend's house, where he would pick me up from there with his car. While I was waiting near the train station, I noticed a group of bus drivers who were smoking and talking to each other. I approached them to ask them which one of them was going to be the one to drive to the city nearest my boyfriend's, and one of them, a small man with gray hair, who was probably in his late 40s, maybe early 50s, told me that it was him. He noticed my skirt and said that I must be freezing, so he offered me to go heat myself in the bus and wait there until it was time to depart. I gladly accepted, as I was definitely freezing, and while we were walking to the bus, which was parked in a very dark corner with no lights, he got very close to me and started to act very familiar with me, asking me about where I lived, where I was going, and things like that. I was feeling very uneasy and uncomfortable, but I was raised to be polite, and I've always been a people pleaser. So I answered all of his questions with as little detail as possible until we reached the bus. He opened the door for me, and while all my instincts were screaming to me to not go into that bus, I ignored them and I got in anyway. I sat at the front of the bus where there was a tiny bit of light, but mind you, I am black, and even in the dark, it would have been very difficult for anyone to seize me, besides from the other bus drivers who saw me leave with the driver, and no one knew that I was in the bus except for them. Anyway, the second I got into the bus, things got even weirder. He threw his lit cigarette away and got into the bus with me as well, all while telling me a bunch of anecdotes about the bus, about how the bus was actually designed to transport the French football team and how there was a huge table and even a bathroom at the back of the bus, and that I should come to the back of the bus with him to see it. He suggested this to me twice, to come to the back of the bus where there were absolutely no lights, and this scared me even more. So I texted my boyfriend, "Might not come tonight, weird bus driver, call me ASAP," while ignoring the driver's rambling. He then came back to the front of the bus and stayed in the corridor blocking my way. He talked about random things that I don't remember, and all the time, his eyes were fixated on me, especially my phone that was in my hand and my knees/thighs. All the time, I was praying for my boyfriend to see my message and call me, and when he finally did, I breathed a big sigh of relief. The driver must have seen the face of my boyfriend on the screen of my phone because he took a step back and told me that he was going to smoke another cigarette outside. I answered my phone and I told my boyfriend everything that was going on while looking out the window to keep an eye on the bus driver. When he was far enough, I ran to get out of the bus, only to discover in shock and horror that he had locked the door. I was trapped in the bus and no one knew where I was except for my boyfriend, the creepy bus driver, and the other bus drivers who saw me leave with him. Still on the phone with my boyfriend, I went back to where I was previously sitting and saw through the window that the creepy bus driver was coming back. When he saw me on the phone, he left and locked the bus again. He did this circus trick back and forth a total of 3 times, locking the bus behind him every single time. But the last time he stayed near the bus, so I hung up with my boyfriend and decided to text him instead. At some point, I sat on another seat to keep an eye on the creepy bus driver, and through the window I saw and heard an elderly woman who asked him if this bus was going to the city nearest my boyfriend's, and he deliberately lied to her, telling her that it would be another bus. At this point, I was really freaking out, frantically texting my boyfriend that I was probably going to be unalived and this bus driver would do terrible things to me, then unalive me, and throw my body away. It was at this moment that the bus driver went back in the bus and locked the door again. We were supposed to leave in less than 10 minutes, and suddenly something finally snapped in my brain. I got up and, trying to maintain a calm appearance, I lied to him about how I needed to go back to the train station to go to the bathroom. He told me that there were bathrooms in the bus, and then I lied again, saying that I needed some snacks from the vending machine. He hesitated and finally accepted to let me go, but before he did, he pretended twice that the button to the door wasn't working, and at this point, I didn't care about hiding my distress anymore. I told him that if he couldn't open the door, I'd pick up the emergency hammer and break the door. And of course, suddenly, the button worked again. I bolted out of the bus and I took the deepest breath of cold, fresh winter air that I've ever taken. I've never been in prison, but I imagine that's what it feels like to be released from prison. I then ran up to the train station and hid behind the very first vending machine, and when I finally felt safe, I burst into tears. I called my boyfriend back, and he told me that he called his sister, who lived in Versailles, so that her boyfriend could come pick me up. While I was trying to calm myself, guess who I saw coming in the train station? The creepy bus driver. He was acting like he was looking for something, or rather, someone, and that someone was likely me. I held my breath and I waited for him to leave, and then cried some more because I realized that at that moment, I was his prey, and I was right about him having bad intentions. Finally, the boyfriend of my boyfriend's sister came to take me back to where I live, but I still couldn't sleep that night or even the following days because my insomnia worsened. I made a complaint to the bus company, but since he wasn't a usual driver for them, nothing was done and I didn't even get an answer back. I am very grateful for everyone who helped me that night, and I know it has been said before, but let me say it again. Trust your gut. Trust your instincts. They're never wrong. Also, screw being polite with creeps that make you feel uncomfortable, unsafe, and uneasy. OP, first and foremost, I'm glad that you're safe and nothing happened to you. Secondly, that is a horrible, creepy, and scary position to be in. Being locked in there, not knowing how to get out, that must have been terrifying. And at the end, you're exactly right. Trust your instincts and trust your gut. You do not have to be polite or nice to anyone that makes you feel creepy, uncomfortable, unsafe, or uneasy for any reason. And you don't need a reason for them to make you feel uncomfortable for you to want to run. If you have that feeling, trust your gut and get out of there. I'm glad you're safe, OP. That was Reddit After Hours, bringing you r/LetsNotMeet. Thank you all so much for listening, and if you like these videos, like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below for any future Reddit subs that you'd like us to cover in the future, as we post new Reddit videos almost every single day.